This is the 14th edition of the Fjord Trends. Each year we examine trends at the intersection of people, technology and business and look at what's shaping the way we create products and services. And we're looking at trends that are going to impact businesses in the next sort of 1 to 2 years. We have 7 trends that we are going to talk through today with you. If you would like to know more, there is of course a PDF that you can download and you can find much more content and evidence around each of the trends. So every year when we've finished, we step back and we kind of search for a meta theme. Last year we predicted a realignment of the fundamentals and boy, did that come true. The pandemic has only accelerated this realignment of the fundamentals of business. It's changed how we live, how we work, how we learn, shop and play, as well as how and where we experience things. It's highlighted what's important to us and inspired immense community spirit and ingenuity. Looking back throughout history, after a global crisis, a new era of thinking has always begun. Right now, we have an opportunity to decide what we want the 21st century Renaissance to look like, starting appropriately in 2021. As a result, the overarching theme of the Fjord Trends this year is mapping new territory. With the events of 2020 upending so much of what we took for granted, we now need to look ahead. And we need to help people to solve their challenges, but on their own terms. In the Middle Ages, cartographers wrote, "Here be dragons," to indicate areas of the oceans that were unexplored. They were sort of stumped to know what to put in those empty spaces, and so they imagined dragons were there. Now we need to draw these maps again. In this case, what do we want from the 21st century? What do we not want? What we definitely don't want is dragons. We've had plenty of those. Now is the time to redraw those maps as we want them to be. The pandemic has brought clarity and surprises alongside its chaos and tragedies. I think that there's some comfort to be drawn from the fact that the world has faced a common adversary. But while we've kind of all been in it together, we've also all been experiencing it in our own ways. And brands and businesses really need to understand people's new contexts, understand and empathise with their new needs and the way that they're feeling, and provide ways and tools to let them hack their own solutions. So the first trend this year is collective displacement. In 2020, literally how and where we experienced everything changed, leaving us feeling a bit sort of disconnected from our familiar comforts, both big and small. We've had displacement around place, with people moving from the city to the countryside, and we've seen this impact on our city real estate prices and also the emptying of our CBDs. We've also seen the number of young adults living with their parents has increased. By September, for the first time since the Great Depression, 52% of young adults were living with their parents. We've seen activity displacements from real life to online, everything from Zoom weddings to online yoga. And it turns out that this may have shown us some new ways to be, with surprising experience gains as well as losses. In community, where groups gather as well as the shape and size of those groups has changed, think religion and football, and our collective loss of the sense of agency over our choices. The word lockdown says it all. Displacement is also fast becoming a self-perpetuating reality. If a shopping mall loses a large department store that was once its major draw, what's going to encourage those shoppers to return? And as our patterns of movements changed and our activities became centred around the home, businesses suddenly faced a visibility challenge. Just how can a brand ensure it stands out in such circumstances? This visibility challenge is further complicated by tracking ad technology disruption, which is biting already. In early 2021, Apple plans to make changes to its operating system, which could change the way that mobile advertisers track people's internet use. The customer we once knew is gone. Brands must question everything they thought they knew about their customers and understand what shifts in their behaviours will be long-term. They need to deliver brand experiences at distance. The London Marathon in October 2020 is one of the best examples I can think of. It saw a staggering 43,000 runners participate virtually in their own homes or gyms. We've also seen a wholesale move to digital channels. DBS, Southeast Asia's largest bank, recorded a 30% year-on-year increase in adoptions of its digital banking services in the first half of 2020. Organisations also need to understand how people gather information and discover brands and contents in this new era. Many of us were used to being sort of introduced to or exposed to countless brands on our daily commute. That's kind of all but gone. Shopping has also moved from being an experience centred around a physical destination to an experience that is atomized with sort of all of these little micro moments spread throughout the day and across multiple devices, often prompted by social media. And as a result, organisations are grappling with how to create joy through immersive experiences and use digital to convey things like texture and the experience of being able to sort of physically touch and try on merchandise. Some really great examples of organisations overcoming this is Nike, who are using augmented reality to help people get the right sneaker fit without trying on in-store. And MAC Cosmetics is using AR to enable customers to virtually try on products via YouTube. So we suggest that in response to this collective displacement, brands need to seek new ways to interact with people from a distance and to offer them experiences that appeal to their new circumstances. I think that businesses also have a role to play in giving people hope. And we have to do this through very careful consideration of the tone of voice in the context of what's happening right now. During a time of displacement, as traumatic as it is also inspiring to see the rise of human ingenuity. Our next trend, do-it-yourself innovation, reflects this. We all know that design and innovation love constraint. And during this time of profound constraint, we're seeing people get creative in amazing ways. This has resulted in a pressing need for organisations to rethink their approaches to innovation by offering tools instead of prescribing solutions, and by empowering people to get more creative with how they live, work, learn and play. The key aspect of this trend is that innovation has shifted from tech first to people first. We've always seen life hacks, people hacking technology and products and services to work better in their lives. We all saw our colleagues who hacked their ironing boards to use as a stand-up desk. My husband created a lovely little wooden box for me to use over COVID to put my laptop on so I could work while standing up. But we're also seeing here is people radically repurposing entire platforms to work better for their own experiences. We need to think of platforms now as kind of half-painted canvases upon which people will create and finish a product based on their needs. In Lebanon, for example, post-lockdown and in the wake of Beirut's devastating port explosion, schools turned WhatsApp into an informal distant learning program. Or think of Travis Scott using Fortnite as a virtual concert venue. One of the things I love about this trend is that it blurs the line between creator and customer. In the design field, we've long used co-creation methods as part of our design process, but now co-creation is much an output as it is an input. For companies to succeed, they will need to think of their products and services as suggestive of use instead of prescriptive. To start designing tools and platforms that enable people to create for themselves and shape technology around their goals. We need to release these products and services into the world and let the end user and consumer finish them. We know that innovation isn't just about ideas, it's about having the courage and fortitude to see new ideas through the development cycle and into market. This is why time and stamina are so crucial to innovation success. But we think that this trend points to ways to gain tremendous efficiency, focusing on everyday people's creativity and using that to your organisation's advantage. Just the other day, a colleague's 16-year-old daughter showed her a new musical of Ratatouille that was written and choreographed through crowdsourced TikTok users, pulled together over just a few months and recorded by famous Broadway artists and a whole bunch of other artists. If this isn't do-it-yourself innovation, then I don't know what is. Our next trend, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, is about the wholesale change we're seeing in the reciprocal employment agreement between employer and employee. So much of the peripheral value of work has been lost for people. We're sitting in front of screens just 24 hours a day or 10 hours a day. But think about the new employee not meeting peers for the first time. All those water cooler moments and catch-ups by the coffee machine gone. Not to mention the free food, corporate dinners, or the business class flights. It's just less fun. On top of this, many of the costs previously covered by the employer shifted to the employee. Think desks and office furniture, heating, broadband bills, those free coffees. Working from home has become living in your office, with family, childcare, and homeschooling at the core of it. Research has shown that more than 6 months into pandemic shutdowns, chances were that the average 4.3 hours per week that you saved on your commute time were swallowed by a new routine. You've been using that extra time for work. That's the case for 35% of US office workers, according to new data from a survey of more than 10,000 Americans. The workplace isn't dead, but it has morphed into something else. It's now a kind of mindset supported by technology in our home, quite often. And we think the future won't be one size fits all. There are 3 different vectors of opinion: worker, company, and local government. 2 of these, worker and company, contain a range of sometimes contradictory views on what's next. Workers are split between I want to go back to work and actually I kind of like working from home and I intend to work from home all the time, or at least most of it from now on. Employers are split between the likes of Reed Hastings on Netflix, who sees it as a creative disaster, and CFOs keen to take advantage of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save on overhead costs. Governments, on the other hand, are scared of the social and economic impact of hollowed-out city centres and are putting pressure on businesses to go back. Importantly, this trend stretches beyond office workers. It affects any jobs that could be done remotely and those that are reliant on urban office hubs. Think dry cleaners, pharmacies, bars, restaurants, even mass transit workers. For employers, there are opportunities to innovate around 4 areas. The first is technology. So we are still lacking the software and hardware suitable for long-term remote working. But home working will trigger a watershed moment for innovation. Here are some examples. Google Meet Series 1 includes background noise cancellation and AI software to pan a camera on whoever's speaking. Facebook's new Infinite Office platform is a VR working environment that integrates home workspaces with real office environments. And anyone who's been working in design will be aware of Figma's stratospheric rise in popularity. It's a design tool developed to support remote collaboration, and my whole team has moved over to it. The second major area of opportunity is around culture. How best to build a sense of community and belonging when we are physically apart and where face-to-face is now a premium. I think this will be a real place where the war on talent will come to fruition. Third is around recruiting, resourcing, and rewarding talent. Silicon Valley companies are offering the opportunity to work anywhere if the employee accepts that their salary may reduce in line with the changes in the cost of living in their new location. At Fjord, I've really noticed how much easier it has been to place the very best talent onto a project because I can now resource people from across the whole of Australia and New Zealand, and in fact, the whole of Southeast Asia. And finally, control. How best to affect it and when is it appropriate to do so? So sales of surveillance software to check home workers are working, such as Staff Cop and the always-on webcam video monitor Sneak, have boomed during lockdown. There are obviously important issues around privacy here. People are, after all, in their own private homes. So we are entering an era of profound prototyping around what the future of work could look like, and it's an exciting time full of possibility. But we need to consider the ethics of remote work and acknowledge that each employee's home is still their personal space and that their privacy and freedom is important. And we should be designing our technology and culture solution for flexible working and resilience. Our next trend, Interaction Wanderlust, really builds on how people work, collaborate, and communicate with each other. It's been an overwhelming aspect of our lives, even before the pandemic, that screens have become extensions of ourselves. But in the last 10 months, as screens have become our window into the world, the interactions have become somehow just a bit exhausting and dull. Joy and serendipity has been lost. And the importance of our peripheral vision, what's outside of our screens, what we can see when we're just walking around, is entirely missing in our interactions. There's been a convergence between design, content, and audience, as our screens have become both a window and a stage. Many have taken to purposefully designing the stage that they perform on when they are on screen, setting up pot plants and carefully curating what can be seen behind them. There's also the ubiquitous joke of dressy on top and yoga pants on the bottom. My colleague told me that she recently noticed that both of her kids had started making their beds every day. When I asked what she'd done to enable this modern day miracle, she said it was because their beds were now in full view of all their classmates as they attended their classroom hangouts. With the falling cost and rising quality of cameras and editing tools, professional and amateur content producers have begun meeting in the middle and kind of influencing each other. For example, in the US, late-night host and comic Seth Meyers, like many in his field, started shooting his TV show from home last March. He was helped by a young Australian YouTube personality, a guy called Matt Parker, and he provided his tips on how to be better at producing content made in your home. So you see online and real TV sort of coming together and collaborating. Design for screens has been dominated by leading operating systems for the past 25 years, restricting creativity and leading to overuse and commoditization of templates, and limiting our expectations for how experiences should be online. This has led to this sea of sameness and fatigue in our interactions. We should be feeling joy. And with 2020 mostly limiting us to the screens we have at home, we have started to mourn the loss of the serendipity needed to feel genuine connection with each other. To address this, we've seen significant experimentation around the use of gaming platforms and social platforms and mixed reality environments as a stage for third-party content and audience participation. President Joe Biden and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez used Animal Crossing to meet voters and make random house calls to the players' virtual islands. We've seen a 47% rise in the use of Discord, traditionally a platform for gamers, now being used by clubs and art communities, or just groups of friends to connect. And just the other day, we had a brilliant Fjord team meeting in the immersive virtual world Verbella. We were all in there and we had our avatars and we were running around and exploring the space and doing crazy dance moves and chatting, and you can even present PowerPoint presentations in there. It was great. So the call to action here is to find ways to recreate offline emotions in online contexts. Companies can innovate by redesigning audience participation to more effectively draw audiences into an experience. As either viewers, participants, or co-creators, online experiences can draw much bigger crowds. German asset manager DWS's flagship investment roadshow was forced to make a move online in April, like many other conferences. It now plans to continue after finding that online it attracted 3 times the number of participants than its traditional conferences staged face-to-face. The next trend is liquid infrastructure, and this is very much the flip side of collective displacement. How and where we get things has changed. And it's forcing businesses to reshape how they manufacture, ship, store, and deliver their products and services. Our liquid expectations now extend to the delivery and unboxing experience, which is traditionally outside a brand's ecosystem. And this has implications for everything that happens before that moment. Additionally, cost to serve has been rising, and rising dramatically. Why? First of all, the loss of incidental spending. Secondly, retail health and sanitary costs rising, volume efficiencies in the idea of shop, and higher returns. Meanwhile, direct-to-consumer models have proven to be really difficult to scale. Closeness to the customer is clearly key, and brands need to rethink the trade-offs between experience and cost and design around the last 6 feet of the experience. Does delight or efficiency matter more? This is leading brands to rethink the position of their supply chain and expand the idea of what their assets are used for. The rapid adaptation of initial lockdowns globally shattered conventions. Barclays Bank, for example, now expects its physical branches soon to be mainly used by call centre workers and investment banking. In many cases, the pandemic drove new partnerships to be created ad hoc. Expect the rise of a B2B sharing economy and partnerships over costly ownership investment. Dark kitchens serving home food delivery are one sign of this. But remember that deprived of a hospitality experience, brand saliency becomes harder to achieve in these circumstances. New value propositions and business models will lead to two-speed innovation, embracing the ability to respond rapidly to change, but stay true to long-term purpose with core programs. The value of supply chain will go beyond efficiency, measuring it on growth, flexibility, and agility. And personalization at the point of delivery will become a differentiation opportunity, possibly with 5G as a driver. Lastly, but not least, another curveball. Supply chain redesign will enable brands to consider more local and sustainable alternatives. So we suggest openly commit to shifting to sustainable redesign. Within 5 years, sustainability will be the biggest influence on your infrastructure decisions. And start figuring out how you design for sustainability. Our next trend addresses the challenge with empathy. There is much, too much to feel empathy for as we enter the 21st century. And in a world of high expectation and constant scrutiny, the challenge is to make the empathy we have for each other and that brands declare publicly actually mean something. The fight for equality became a prevalent issue in 2020 with George Floyd's death, sparking the ongoing and impassioned Black Lives Matter protests. But awareness and concern about inequalities in all its forms grew rapidly in 2020. The pandemic exacerbated existing inequalities, but also created new ones. For example, women were 3 times more likely than men not to work during the pandemic because of childcare needs at home. Additional inequalities arose around those who had access to bandwidth, healthcare, work or school. Everything people need to function in our collective displacement created acute needs and a call to feel empathy for those people who cannot get those needs met. But this poses a challenge for organisations as they try to respond, which is making it more important than ever to manage these narratives well. We have so much to feel empathy for, and yet never before has there been more competing narratives fighting for our attention. Our trends last year talked about the growing tension for organisations between profit and purpose, and a rise in taking a purpose-led approach. In the empathy challenge trend, this has only become more intense as companies now have to figure out how they want to handle polarising narratives, how to align their purpose with these narratives, and which side of the story, if any, they choose to support. Because staying silent is also a choice. In September, Yelp's decision to warn users about businesses accused of racism sparked debates online. And last summer, Bon Appetit's statement on their website in support of the Black Lives Matter movement resulted in an immediate reckoning as current and former employees pointed out the hypocrisy of this as they shared stories of systemic racism at the magazine, which ultimately resulted in the resignation of the editor-in-chief. So it's never been more important to get your empathy narrative right, to tie it to your purpose, and then, importantly, to have actions that give that empathy true meaning. Patagonia is an example of a brand that has navigated this very well. They have clearly stated their purpose, and then they make bold moves that tie to it. Now, it's impossible to talk about empathy without mentioning the role it has in design. Empathy has long been fundamental to good design. But over the years, with the rise of design thinking, empathy has been made to seem almost like something that is easily ticked off a list. And it also sort of highlights the discomfort that many designers have in their own privilege, and the notion that, like with an afternoon of empathy building, they can truly design for people entirely different from them. The key here with the empathy challenge is to shift our notion of empathy from a thing that you do to a way that you be. To abstract your empathy into a series of meaningful actions that will have a positive impact to those you design for. Stories have always mattered, as they are central to the human experience, but now they've become a core part of a brand's image too. Effectively managing the stories you tell to reflect the empathy that you feel, as aligned to the purpose that drives your organisations and the actions your organisation takes, has never been more critical. Well, rituals lost and found. This one says it all in the title. The rituals, both big and small, that form the framework and coping strategies of everyday life have changed. As there's strong sentimental significance attached to routines and to the people and places and objects that we closely associate with them, we really feel they're lost profoundly, even with much more serious losses around us. Rituals are deeply human. They can be both big, like a wedding, and small, like that daily flat white on your way to the office. The loss of rituals is something we share as humanity in 2021. We've been prompted to rethink many aspects of our lives and to take a fresh look at our personal priorities and values. In societies where mindfulness was less culturally ingrained, we've started to see a real rise in modern spirituality and mindfulness as a form of coping strategy. Just look at the rise of Headspace and Calm, which is now being offered by Amex as a premium card benefit. It's been a period for reassessment and searching for new meaning that has inspired many people to develop new rituals. Whether that's team quiz events, swimming in the sea, or my family's own personal new ritual, a daily dog walk in the bush around our neighbourhood. Brands have an opportunity to step in and help people to regain a sense of control and empowerment. In the US, 75% of customers tried different stores or brands during the pandemic, and 60% of those expect to integrate new brands or stores into their post-pandemic lives. So, first, ask if your brand is part of a habit or a ritual, and then understand the blank space left by a lost ritual and design an appropriate experience to replace it. And it's really important to focus on both the emotional connection and function. Some ways you may be able to do this include, firstly, creating rituals that create kind of like a portal or a transition point between our different selves. This is especially relevant for brands in beauty, grooming and fashion, where our ability to express ourselves through our appearance has been changed by lockdowns and our new home working routines. Microsoft is offering a way to replicate healthy boundaries between work and home by creating virtual commutes on Teams, or rituals that create a sense of belonging. The challenge for brands is to create experiences that can become rituals outside a conventional physical social setting, and yet retain the same sense of community. Peloton has done this brilliantly. Mars have made a variety of bags for Zoom costume parties and scary home movie nights. In Japan, they've created an app allowing smartphone users to cheer or jeer remotely during a match and have that sound played out in the stadium live. Another way is to create rituals as a source of comfort. You know, we have all of this me time, but how can we enhance such moments by deepening the emotions felt or by making things perhaps a little bit easier? And then rituals as an anchor. The big moments shared with others. Wedding website shadi.com created a new wedding from home, seeking to bring as many of the most meaningful moments from an in-person event to virtual weddings. So we suggest embracing behavioural design and making sure the new ritual is really linked to your brand purpose. And encourage rituals to help people transition from lost to found, help people to feel more relevant. How can you provide support psychologically and sustainably? How can you incorporate mental health considerations into your products and services? While we're all in this together, our personal experiences vary. So remember that some people will be coping and grieving, while others are embracing new sources of joy. So let's talk about hope again. It's the only way to approach the year ahead. So thank you for listening to Fjord's Trends for 2021. We hope that you have found them insightful. Please do go online and Google Fjord Trends 2021 to download the full report.